LeBron James defending his sons? That is just another Tuesday in the NBA. But the noise this time? It hit different. It felt personal. We are talking about Ron Harper, a 5-time NBA champion going public with comments about Bronny and Bryce James that backed LeBron into a corner where silence was simply not an option. So, let's break down exactly what Harper said to light the fuse, how the King fired back, and what this explosive beef tells us about the brutal, high-stakes debate surrounding NBA legacy players and the nepo baby label attached to their kids. First off, Ron Harper is not some faceless Twitter troll living in a basement. The man is certified royalty. He has 5 rings on his fingers. 3 of those came running with Jordan's Bulls during the absolute peak of the 1990s, and the other 2 came with the Lakers during the Shaq and Kobe dynasty. So when Ron Harper opens his mouth about basketball, the room goes quiet. People listen. That resume, that championship pedigree, that is exactly why his critique of the James family landed with the weight of a sledgehammer. Harper didn't just offer advice. He questioned the entire existence of Bronny and Bryce James in the basketball ecosystem. The core of his message was cold. LeBron's sons are eating off their father's plate. He implied they are riding the coattails of his influence and fame rather than kicking down the door on their own merit. Harper essentially said that if you strip away the last name James, neither Bronny nor Bryce would be sniffing the kind of viral attention, roster spots, or professional pathways they are currently walking on. Now, let's be real. This is a hot take that has been circulating in barbershops and group chats for years. You hear it from radio hosts, angry fans on social media, and washed-up players trying to get clicks on the podcast circuit. But there is a massive difference between user 459 on X posting hate and a 5-time NBA champion saying it with his chest on a major platform. Harper didn't whisper this in a private text. He grabbed the mic and broadcast it to the world, and the basketball community devoured it instantly. Harper's comments zeroed in on the Los Angeles Lakers selecting Bronny James in the 2024 draft, suggesting the move was less about scouting reports and more about keeping the King happy, a PR stunt to manufacture a father-son fairy tale rather than a serious basketball decision. Sure, Bronny was the 55th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. We are talking about a late second rounder, usually a throwaway pick, but Harper framed it as a slot that still wouldn't have been there if the kid's name was Bronny Smith. And he didn't just stop at the pro level, he dragged Bryce James into the crossfire too. Bryce, the younger brother, currently navigating the high school circuit and hopping between prep schools, got painted with the same broad brush. Harper lumped the brothers together, pushing a narrative that they are products of proximity to greatness, not necessarily the heirs to it. But what really made this critique sting was the shadow of comparison, specifically to Harper's own flesh and blood, Ron Harper Jr., the younger Harper grounded out at Rutgers University, putting together a legitimately solid college career. He was a dog in the Big Ten, earning his stripes. But come the 2022 NBA draft, Ron Harper Jr. went undrafted. He had to fight for scraps in the G League and claw his way through training camp invites just to get a look. Harper Sr. used his son's gritty, unglamorous journey as a weapon, implying that some kids have to scale the mountain while others get a helicopter ride to the summit because of who their dad is. That comparison wasn't subtle. It was a direct shot, and you better believe it registered on LeBron James's radar. The timing of this drama, absolute perfection for maximum chaos. This didn't drop during the quiet days of August when everyone is desperate for content. No, this hit right when Bronny was in the trenches, trying to prove he belonged to professional basketball, grinding through the G League schedule while carrying the crushing weight of being the son of the greatest of all time. Every single move Bronny made was under a microscope. Every missed jumper, viral. Every turnover, analyzed. Every minute on the floor was being compared to what his dad was doing at age 18. And right into that pressure cooker, Ron Harper tosses a grenade, validating the haters and adding fuel to a fire that was already out of control. The clip spread like wildfire across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X. The blogs went crazy, the debate shows screamed about it, and the entire sports world turned to face one direction, asking the same question: what is LeBron going to do? Because, let's be honest, LeBron James has never been the type to let people take shots at his family and walk away unscathed. He has a long, documented history of clapping back at anyone, media, fans, or peers who questions his kids' talent or their right to chase their dreams. And Ron Harper, rings or no rings, was about to find out that a trophy case doesn't give you immunity when you come for the King's pride. To really understand why this beef escalated so quickly, you have to respect who Ron Harper is in the grand scheme of the NBA. He isn't a one-note character in this story. His career had layers. He wasn't just a role player, he was a star who evolved, giving him the credibility to speak his mind. Flashback to 1986, the Cleveland Cavaliers draft him 8th overall, and before he was a defensive specialist, the man was a walking bucket. Before the gray hairs and the role player reputation, rewind the tape, Ron Harper was a straight-up problem. We're talking a walking bucket dropping over 22 a night in his sophomore year, looking like the next big superstar guard. The man was a freak of nature with rim-rocking athleticism, blowing past defenders at will and playing with a kind of nasty aggression that made opponents think twice about getting in his way. But in sports, destiny hangs by a thread, or in Harper's case, a ligament. And one devastating injury completely rewrote the script of his career. That knee injury should have ended him, but Harper didn't fold. He evolved. He killed the ego of a primary scorer and rebirthed himself as a gritty defender, a facilitator, the ultimate glue guy doing the dirty work. And guess what? That painful transformation didn't just save his career. It paved the golden road to basketball immortality. Fast forward to 1994, and he steps into the circus that was the Chicago Bulls, accepting a backseat role next to Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman, sacrificing his own shine so the team could blind the world. He swallowed his pride, locked in on defense, and helped orchestrate the second three-peat, grabbing 3 straight rings from 1996 to 1998 like it was nothing. But he wasn't done chasing jewelry. He packed his bags for Hollywood to join the Los Angeles Lakers, teaming up with a little duo you might know, Shaq and Kobe, right at the start of their dynasty. 2 more rings in 2000 and 2001 followed, giving him a staggering 5 championships in just 6 years, a resume so stacked it's almost laughable. That puts Harper in the VIP section of NBA history, an exclusive club of guys who actually know what sacrifice smells like, what winning demands, and exactly who belongs on that championship floor and who is just taking up space. So when a guy with that much hardware starts talking about basketball pedigree, about who's got it and who's just faking it, the whole room goes quiet and listens. This isn't some analyst shouting hot takes for clicks. This is a man speaking from the trenches, bleeding experience rather than theory. He looked Michael Jordan in the eye when MJ was foaming at the mouth to win. He practiced against a young, obsessive Kobe Bryant. He knows what the DNA of a killer looks like. He has seen true greatness up close and personal, which is precisely why his sudden, sharp jab at Bronny and Bryce James cut through the noise like a knife. Look, if some random guy with a microphone says LeBron's kids are riding daddy's coattails, you scroll past it and laugh, but when a 5-time champ says it, the vibe shifts immediately. The weight of those rings forces you to stop and actually wrestle with the argument instead of just brushing it off as hate from the cheap seats. And let's be real, there's a personal edge here too. Harper isn't just a player, he's a father who watched his own son try to climb this exact same mountain. Ron Harper Jr. didn't get the red carpet rolled out. He took the gritty, unglamorous back roads that most basketball families know all too well. The kid balled out in college, racked up awards, did everything right, and yet, on draft night, silence. The NBA didn't call his name. He had to get it out of the mud in the G League, fighting for a 10-day contract, scrapping for survival without a legendary father pulling strings in the executive suite. Now, is it 100% fair to say he had zero help? That's a debate for another day, and maybe a little naive. Ron Harper Sr. is still a household name, and let's not pretend that didn't open a door or two, or at least get a phone call answered. But let's be honest, comparing the influence of Ron Harper to the galactic empire of LeBron James is like comparing a candle to a supernova. LeBron isn't just a dad, he is the face of the league, a billionaire mogul, and arguably the most powerful figure to ever lace up sneakers. The access, the cameras, the media machine, everything that surrounds LeBron's kids is on a level of insanity that the basketball world has never seen before. Harper seemed to be drawing a hard line in the sand between earned opportunity, the blood, sweat, and tears route, and manufactured opportunity, the VIP pass route. And without hesitation, he tossed Bronny and Bryce right onto the manufactured side of that line, sparking a wildfire. The framing was brutal, direct, and incredibly public, and you better believe it, pinged on LeBron's radar instantly. But we have to zoom out for a second. This isn't new. There is a long, bitter tradition of retired NBA vets looking sideways at the new generation. It's the classic old head energy, especially when it comes to the sons of stars who grew up in mansions rather than the projects. The assumption is always the same. These rich kids are soft, they haven't suffered, they don't have that desperation that turns a player into a killer. Harper's comments slotted perfectly into that narrative, feeling less like a personal beef and more like a verdict on the culture of the modern NBA. But here is the thing about LeBron James. He didn't take it as a cultural critique. He took it as a declaration of war on his blood. For 2 decades, King James has been the master of PR, keeping his cool, saying the right things, never letting them see him sweat. He plays the media game like a grandmaster, calculating every word, every post, every silence. He knows the world is waiting for him to slip up, waiting to dissect his anger, so he usually gives them nothing. But you come for his Cubs, all that media training goes out the window, and Ron Harper found out exactly where the line is. LeBron's clapback was immediate and fierce. He wasn't interested in a polite debate about scouting reports. He was in full protection mode. He aggressively shut down the narrative that Bronny or Bryce were handed a golden ticket, rejecting the idea that they are just passengers on his train. He emphasized the grind that his boys are in the lab every single day, sweating, bleeding, and competing against top-tier talent to earn their keep. And then he dropped the trump card, reminding everyone that Bronny's path to the league wasn't just bumpy, it was nearly fatal. We are talking about the terrifying moment in July 2023 when Bronny James suffered a cardiac arrest right there on the USC practice floor. 1 minute he is playing ball, the next he is fighting for his life, hospitalized, undergoing tests, facing a reality scarier than any game. That is a trauma most grown men couldn't handle, let alone a teenager under the biggest microscope in the world trying to prove he belongs. Bronny didn't just rehab an injury. He came back from the edge, returned to the court, and that resilience speaks louder than any last name ever could. It started like a script everyone saw coming. He laced them up at USC, put his name in the NBA draft, and got the call from the Lakers. But LeBron flipped the script, dropping a cold reality check that cut through the noise. No amount of VIP access or last name privilege can save you when your chest tightens and everything goes black. Fame doesn't have the power to restart a stopped heart. And let's be real for a second, no amount of clout or connections can force a young man to step back onto the hardwood after staring death in the face. That kind of trauma, it sends most people running for the exit, not back to the paint. Bronny did that heavy lifting himself. Sure, the family was in his corner, cheering him on, but that grueling physical grind, the mental warfare of trusting your own body again, that was a solo mission handled entirely by the kid. Then LeBron pivoted, taking aim at the louder, uglier narrative circulating in the cheap seats, the idea that his sons haven't earned a single inch of ground they stand on. He didn't sugarcoat it. He acknowledged Bronny is basically in the first quarter of his career, admitting that the box scores and game tape will eventually tell the truth loud and clear. He wasn't out here selling fairy tales, claiming Bronny was already an all-star lock, or that Bryce was some guaranteed lottery ticket waiting to be cashed. What got under his skin, what really set him off, was the total dismissal. The lazy, cynical take that his boys are just walking billboards for sneakers, empty jerseys with a famous name stitched on the back. That narrative, LeBron shut it down with prejudice. It was unacceptable, disrespectful, and frankly lazy. And he didn't just brush off the source, he went straight at the personal nature of Harper's jabs. LeBron made sure to highlight the irony here. Harper isn't some random troll on Twitter. He's a former player. He knows the grind. He knows how brutal the path to the league actually is. So the question hung in the air like a bad foul call. Why would a fellow basketball dad choose to publicly dunk on someone else's kid? Why tear them down when you could just stay silent? It didn't add up. LeBron suggested that Harper's attempt to compare his own son's path to Bronny's wasn't just apples to oranges. It was unfair, unnecessary, and frankly, a cheap shot. He reminded everyone that these are two different young men navigating their own minefields, fighting their own demons, and trying to carve out a lane in a ruthless industry. But beneath the anger, there was a smarter layer to LeBron's clapback, tackling the whole nepotism in the NBA debate that's been dominating the headlines. Look, LeBron has never been shy about his endgame. He's been shouting it from the rooftops for years. He wanted to share the court with his blood. He planted that flag way back, years before it was even a realistic possibility, making it the worst-kept secret in sports history. So when the Lakers finally called Bronny's name, it wasn't just a draft pick, it was history being written in real time. The first father-son duo to clock in for the same squad. That is monumental. Now, LeBron didn't insult our intelligence by pretending his massive shadow didn't influence the Lakers' decision, but he framed the narrative way differently than Harper's cynical take. LeBron's stance was clear. Opening a door for someone isn't the same as carrying them through it. Creating an opportunity isn't a handout if the person still has to do the work. Bronny didn't get a free pass to the roster. He still had to sweat through the combine, grind out the workouts, and perform with every scout in the league dissecting his jump shot. The stage may have been set by the king, but the performance, that was all on the prince. LeBron's response was firm, like a hard screen at the top of the key. It was direct, razor sharp, and left zero room for interpretation. He wasn't about to let Ron Harper or any other critic with a podcast define his son's careers based on hot takes and lazy assumptions. The message was loud, clear, and broadcast on a frequency the whole world could hear. You want to critique my jumper? Fine. You want to talk about my legacy? Go ahead. But come for my kids with disrespect, and we are going to have a serious problem. And that's the thing. When LeBron speaks, the sports world doesn't just listen, it stops. His voice drowns out the noise, booming at a volume that makes everyone else sound like they're whispering. His defense reached millions instantly, totally eclipsing Harper's original comments. The headline shifted overnight from Harper questions nepotism to LeBron goes into dad mode to protect his family. Intentional or not, LeBron snatched the narrative, rewrote the headline, and controlled the news cycle within hours of hitting send. But let's take a timeout on the drama and actually look at the game tape. Strip away the last name, the billionaire dad, and the hype, what have Bronny and Bryce actually done on the floor. The debate usually generates more heat than light, with facts getting buried under an avalanche of screaming opinions and Twitter threads. Bronny James suited up for Sierra Canyon in Los Angeles, which isn't just a high school. It's basically a televised basketball factory for future pros. He was sharing the ball with other five-star recruits, swimming in a deep talent pool, and still managed to snag a McDonald's All-American nomination. His high school run? Solid, respectable. He was a four-star recruit, meaning he was elite, sitting near the top of the class, but he wasn't the undisputed king of the hill. He wasn't the number one prospect in the nation. He wasn't projected as some one-and-done savior destined for the top 3 picks. Let's keep it real. His ranking showed a kid with legitimate NBA tools, a high basketball IQ, and a ceiling that was still being constructed. He committed to USC, ready to work, but his freshman season got derailed by a nightmare scenario, the cardiac arrest in July 2023. That moment changed the entire trajectory. Suddenly, it wasn't about points per game. His return to the floor became a survival story that was bigger than basketball. When he checked into his first game back, it was headline news across the country. But practically speaking, his minutes were capped and his stats were understandably quiet. He averaged just a few points a game in short bursts. Naturally, the critics pounced, waving those stat sheets around as proof that he was out of his depth. But supporters clapped back with context. We are talking about a kid recovering from a life-threatening medical event trying to play Division I ball. Cut him some slack. Judging his entire potential on a choppy, medically disrupted freshman season, that's not just premature, it's borderline ridiculous. Still, Bronny declared for the 2024 NBA draft after just that one season, and when the Lakers took him at 55th overall, the reactions were explosive. The pick triggered an immediate firestorm. One side saw a smart flyer on a kid with elite defensive instincts, athleticism, and serious long-term upside. The other side, they saw a blatant favor to the king, a move designed purely to keep the franchise savior happy and comfortable in Los Angeles. The truth? It's probably sitting somewhere in the messy middle. Teams burn second-round picks on wild gambles, marketing plays, and favors all the time. It's part of the business. Bronny's selection might have had some extra flavor to it, but the logic wasn't unprecedented. It was a unique situation, sure, but it wasn't a crime against basketball. Welcome to the grind of the G League, where hype goes to die and careers are fought for in empty gyms. For Bronny, this wasn't a victory lap, it was a wake-up call. The numbers? Let's just say they didn't exactly scream future superstar. He hit the rookie wall hard. You could see the struggle and real-time inconsistency plaguing his game like it does for 99% of kids getting their first taste of grown man basketball. But look closer, and you'd see the sparks, the flashes. Those split-second moments that made scouts sit up and whisper, okay, there's something there. He wasn't lighting up the scoreboard, sure, but his defensive instincts, elite. His athleticism, pro level. His basketball IQ, off the charts. The jump shot and the ability to create his own offense were the missing pieces of the puzzle, glaringly obvious holes that needed serious patchwork. And honestly, that's the standard blueprint for a second-round pick trying to survive. It's gritty, it's ugly, and it's completely normal. Then you have Bryce James, the younger brother, carving out a totally different lane. He's not the pit bull defender. Bronny is. Bryce is the smooth operator, a perimeter sniper looking to stretch the floor. But his journey has been a carousel. He's been bouncing around the high school circuit like a free agent Sierra Canyon, Campbell Hall, Notre Dame High School. The kid's got more jersey swaps than a seasoned vet. In California, every single transfer was breaking news. Why? Partly because the transfer portal culture is out of control, but mostly because the name on the back of his jersey carries the weight of a kingdom. To his credit, Bryce has leveled up. He's showing real growth, evolving his game, and college scouts are starting to circle not just for the photo op, but for the potential. But let's pump the brakes. We are talking about the early chapters of a very long book. Trying to predict where Bryce lands in 5 years is a fool's game. Here is the cold hard truth about both brothers. They are navigating a minefield. They are playing under a microscope so powerful it could burn an ant, facing a level of scrutiny that no basketball family in history has ever had to endure. Think about the other NBA legacies. The Currys, the Hardaways, the Paytons. Sure, they dealt with comparisons. They heard the whispers. You'll never be as good as your old man. But those dads were watching from the stands or the broadcast booth. None of them were lacing up sneakers in the locker room next door. We are talking about LeBron James, the face of the sport, a global icon running a daily content machine that feeds the internet's obsession. That dynamic turns a simple missed layup into a 24-hour news cycle. It turns a bad game into a national debate. But let's be clear, having the last name James doesn't give you a free pass from criticism. The NBA is a ruthless meritocracy. It doesn't care who your father is. If you can't ball, you get cut. Simple as that. The hardwood doesn't lie. You can have all the Instagram followers in the world, but if you're a liability on defense or you can't hit an open three, the league will chew you up and spit you out. Fame doesn't put the ball in the hoop. Bronny isn't playing for a grade on a report card. He's playing for his life in this league. He'll be judged on years of grind, not a few bad months. And Bryce, he's staring down the exact same barrel. But this is where LeBron drew the line in the sand. This is where he went on the offensive. What made Ron Harper's comments sting wasn't the critique, it was the dismissal. It felt less like analysis and more like a slap in the face. A premature eulogy for two careers that had barely started. LeBron's argument was simple. Let them breathe. You're writing the obituary before the kids have even had a chance to live. Now, let's look at the math. The statistical reality is brutal. Most second-round picks are out of the league before they can even unpack their bags. Many don't even sniff a long-term roster spot. They are forgotten. But then you have the outliers. The dogs. You have guys like Nikola Jokic drafted 41st overall while a commercial for tacos was airing who became the best player on the planet. You have Malcolm Brogdon at pick 36. Diamonds are found in the rough every single year. Your draft night suit doesn't define you. The sweat you drop in the gym when nobody is watching, that defines you. LeBron is fighting for his son's right to have that time. To fail, to learn, and to grow without the world screaming bust. But this clash with Harper, it wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. It ripped the scab off one of the hottest debates in sports, the nepo baby argument. It's the uncomfortable conversation about legacy, privilege, and who gets the keys to the castle. Who gets the shot, and who gets left out in the cold. The NBA is built on bloodlines. It's a family business. We have seen sons follow fathers into the league for decades. It's practically a tradition. You've got the Barrys, the Currys, Klay Thompson following Michael, Austin Rivers playing for Doc, Tim Hardaway Jr. carrying the crossover torch. The list goes on and on. And every single time, the whispers were there. Is he good enough? Or is it just the name? Some of those kids silenced the haters immediately. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson didn't just make it, they changed the game. Case closed. Others? They had decent runs, maybe bounced around the bench, keeping the debate alive. But the LeBron situation? It is on a galactic scale compared to those guys. LeBron isn't a retired legend waving from a luxury box. He is the active king. He is literally on the roster with his son. It's unprecedented. It's Hollywood script stuff happening in real life. He is the most followed, most scrutinized athlete on the planet. His empire touches everything: media, entertainment, ownership. The spotlight isn't just bright, it is blinding. It is a nuclear reactor of attention. And that intensity magnifies everything. A blocked shot looks like a championship play. A turnover looks like a career-ending disaster. Harper's comments, they struck a nerve because a lot of people in the barbershops and on Twitter feel the exact same way. There is a segment of fans who believe the sanctity of the game is being compromised. They think roster spots are being handed out as party favors rather than being earned in the trenches. They look at Bronny's draft card and they don't see a prospect. They see a front office terrified of losing LeBron, prioritizing business over basketball. They look at the cameras following Bryce around high school gyms, and they see a broken system that worships the name on the back of the jersey while ignoring the kid in the gym who's actually putting up 30 a night. But flip the coin. The other side argues that there is no such thing as a self-made player in this league. Everyone gets a leg up somewhere. You play for Duke or Kentucky, you're getting elite coaching and national TV slots that a kid from a small school can only dream of. That's privilege. You get drafted by the Heat or the Spurs. You're stepping into a machine designed to make you succeed. That's luck. And if you're born into a basketball royalty, yeah, you get the best trainers, the best diet, the insider knowledge. It's not fair, but sports never were. Let's be real for a second. Having the last name James is like holding a golden ticket to the chocolate factory, but acting like that's the only unfair advantage in the NBA. Please. That's willful ignorance. Pinning a target on Bronny and Bryce for winning the genetic lottery while turning a blind eye to every other nepotism hire in the league, that is the definition of selective outrage. And honestly, it's got the basketball world completely torn in half. You had the old guard stepping up, former players nodding along with Harper, locking arms on principle like it was a defensive scheme. Their argument hit hard. The NBA is a jungle, not a charity. You eat what you kill. They believe handing out roster spots like party favors destroys the competitive soul of the game. Then you had the other side rallying behind the king, screaming that Harper's comments were cheap shots. The unwritten rule: you don't go after a man's family. That is a line in the sand you do not cross. And the internet? Oh, the internet went nuclear. It was an absolute war zone. We are talking comment threads, spiraling thousands of replies deep, total chaos with keyboard warriors throwing haymakers from both corners of the ring. One side was weaponizing Bronny's G League stats, waving the box scores around like evidence in a murder trial, shouting, "See, the numbers don't lie. Harper is right." The defense was just as loud, bringing up his age, his medical charts, and the fact that developing a guard takes time. They were screaming that the kid hasn't even had a cup of coffee in the league yet. Give him a breath. But amidst all the noise, one cold, hard truth emerged. This debate isn't fading to black anytime soon. As long as Bronny is wearing a jersey and Bryce is rising through the ranks, the million-dollar question, do they actually belong, is going to shadow their every move. It's a ruthless pendulum. One clutch three-pointer, he's the heir. One turnover, nepotism, baby. There is no middle ground, just extreme judgment on every single dribble. That is the heavy, suffocating burden of playing under the brightest, hottest spotlight in the sports universe. And nobody knows the heat of that glare better than LeBron. The man has been living in a pressure cooker since he was a 16-year-old phenom in Akron, Ohio. He was born in the fire. So when LeBron fired back at Harper, it wasn't just a clapback. It was a warning shot fired across the bow of the entire league. He made it crystal clear. You come for the Cubs, you deal with the Lion. He isn't going to let it slide. He isn't going to take the high road. And think about the power dynamic here. If you come at his kids, you better be ready for war, because his megaphone is the size of the planet. His response will always drown out your criticism. But give credit where it's due. Ron Harper didn't fold. He didn't stutter. He stood tall in the paint, swearing up and down that this wasn't personal beef. It was strictly basketball analysis. Just calling balls and strikes. He framed it like an OG who respects the grind, earn your keep. And he doubled down on the comparison between his son's uphill battle and the red carpet rolled out for the James boys. Now, Does that gritty truth logic actually hold water when you really look at it? Or is it just a personal jab dressed up in a suit and tie? That answer depends entirely on which side of the bleachers you're sitting in. But what is undeniable is that this explosion just wrote a dramatic new chapter in the saga of LeBron James, not just as a superstar, but as a father fighting for his legacy. We are watching the twilight of a god, folks. He is deep in his 22nd season. It's not just about rings and scoring titles anymore. It's about blood. It's about family. It's about forcing the door open for his sons and making sure it stays open. And he will defend that path like a goalie in Game 7 against anyone trying to delegitimize it. Sure, this specific beef with Harper will fade, news cycles always move on. But the ghost in the machine, the tension between merit versus privilege, the grinders versus the gifted, that is going to haunt the NBA long after these two men stop barking at each other. So, a word of advice to the next pundit grabbing a hot mic to question whether Bronny or Bryce deserves a locker. Do it knowing that the king is watching. He is listening, and he has a loaded chamber ready to fire back at a moment's notice. That is the reality of poking the bear when he's protecting his own. But hey, don't sleep on the opposition either. Ron Harper has 5 rings of his own. He knows a thing or two about a fight.